It doesn't matter if you've been naughty or nice. I'm just glad that you're tuning in to day 17 of 25 Days of Christmas Comics. I'm your host, the Dude Without Fear, and today's Christmas comic is a pretty wild adventure. It is an X-Men comic, and while there are multiple X-Men in the book, it's really just a story about Kitty Pryde. And it's in Uncanny X-Men number 143 in a story titled Demon. So our story starts out, and Storm is actually battling this ancient race of creatures that once ruled the earth and want to rule it again. And they are called the Nagari, I believe is how you say it. I could be way wrong. But that's how I'm going to say it, Nagari. And so, she's fighting them, and they've got like this ancient like temple that they're coming out of, and it's like a portal to their dimension. And they're attacking her, and she's getting torn up, and so she summons all of her power and all of her rage and just channels it into this like place that they're coming out of and just destroys it. And she goes back home and tells Professor X and her fellow X-Men what happened. And Professor X believes that when she destroyed that thing, she destroyed the gateway from their world to ours. And so, time passes and they totally forget about these creatures. But one of them has found its way back to our dimension. Our story then takes us to this young married couple named Doug and Ellie. And it's their first Christmas as a married couple. And Doug wanted to get a real tree for their first Christmas as a married couple. And he's taken Ellie out into the woods to find that tree. They're just young and they're in love and gushing over each other and everything. And then Ellie, over Doug's shoulder, sees something. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, what's that?" And he's like, "Something in the tree. So let me take a look." She's like, "Doug, please be careful." He's like, "Relax, Ellie. It's a false alarm, I think. I'm glad the moon is full tonight because I don't need my flashlight to..." And then something just reaches out and grabs him by the throat and kills him instantly. And then once Doug's dead, this thing goes to Ellie and just kills her too. And it feeds on both their body and their soul. And that's just the first of its many victims this Christmas Eve night. Then we go to the X-Mansion. And this is actually our title page, where we see that this story's written by the classic team of Chris Claremont and John Byrne. It says, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house the X-Men are stirring. It's been a quiet month since their battle in Washington, D.C. with the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and they've spent the time catching their breath, honing old skills, learning new ones. No day, no opportunity is wasted, which is why, even on Christmas Eve, Kitty Pryde, the newest and youngest member of the team, must spend an hour under Professor Xavier's instruction, in addition to her schoolwork, learning all there is to know about the X-Men, their abilities, and their equipment. And Professor X is teaching Kitty the ignition procedure for the Blackbird. And she is tired of going over it, but she repeats it, and they've been repeating it over and over again. And Angel comes in and tells Professor X that the car is ready and that it's getting late, that they need to go. And Kitty's super stoked that Angel has interrupted this procedure. And then Kitty pushes Professor X out into the foyer of the mansion, where Wolverine is waiting with his lady Mariko. And he introduces Professor Xavier to Mariko and vice versa. And then all of a sudden, Nightcrawler bamfs in and has some mistletoe that he puts over Mariko's head, and he gives her a quick kiss on the cheek. And this enrages Wolverine. Like, he loses his crap over this. And he pops his claws, and he takes a strike at the old blue elf. And if it hadn't been for him teleporting out of the way, he would have killed him. And so Colossus grabs Wolverine, and he's like, bro, chill the F out, dude. What is your problem? And Professor X, talks to Wolverine telepathically and gets him to calm down. And Wolverine's like, thank you so much for doing that, Professor. I lost my cool. I gave in to that rage, and I thought I'd worked on that, but clearly I still need to do that. And so him and Mariko go off, and then Storm comes in and says that she's brought the automobile around, and they all pack into the car, except for Angel, who flies off. And Kitty tells him bye, and she's like, finally, they're all gone. And then she realizes, holy crap, they're all gone. I'm all alone. What in the world? And so she goes back inside, and she's thinking about how she's never spent Hanukkah away from her mom and dad before, and she misses them. She's wondering how they're doing, so she picks up the phone to call them, and nobody answers. And so she hangs it up, and it rings back immediately, and she's like, Mom, Dad? But it's actually just Cyclops, who was calling the mansion to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. But he'll call back later. So now that Kitty's all alone on Christmas Eve with nothing to do, she suits up and heads into the danger room. And because she's alone, she can't run any combat training as a safety procedure or safety precaution. So she just sets it up to do some basic gymnastics. And so she's working out, doing her stuff, and thinking about how much the X-Men just train all the time. She's like, we train not just our body, but our minds and our powers. And she's like, all we do is train. And she's like, why do we need to train so much? And then while she's working out, this alarm goes off and freaks her out. And so she runs over to a vid screen and checks it out, and it tells her that there's a possible intruder in Zone 4. And she's like, that's upstairs in Aurora's attic. So she phases up to the attic, and something has crashed in through the skylight, and it has actually the cold temperature has actually killed all of Storm's plants. But Kitty's like, there has to be something more than this that has happened. Because, I mean, yeah, it's cold, but, I mean, these things are practically destroyed. And then she steps in this green goop that's on the floor, and she's like, oh my gosh, what is this? She's like, someone's in here, but who? Then all of a sudden, this Nagarai jumps out at her and she screams. And it lunges at her, and she phases down through the floor, hoping that that'll get her away from it. And it just tears through the floor. I mean, it is coming after her. And so she's running, and she's, phasing through walls and stuff, and it's just right behind her, crashing through all these walls, just destroying the mansion, which happens like every week. And she phases through, and then she phases down through some stairs into a closet to get away from it and throw it off of her scent. And so it's quiet for a minute, and so she decides she's going to phase down and over to another closet that's next to the phone, and she's going to call for help. And so she gets down to the phone, and she's like, X-Men to the rescue, bye bye beastie. And all of a sudden this thing just plows through the wall and tries to attack her, and it reaches for her and is going to slash her, and she phases, and it goes through her, but it hurts her like nothing she's ever felt before in her life. And she's like, I don't know what's up with that. I can't phase through this thing because it hurts me. I've gotta fight it some other way. So she heads back to the danger room, and turns out she could run some combat simulations. There wasn't like any programs in place to stop that. It was just a rule, and Kitty's a good girl, and she was following the rules. But now she's gotta do something, or else she's gonna get murdered. So she runs the most dangerous programs that the danger room's got, and she sets a trap for it. And she's waiting for it to come into the danger room so she can watch it get its butt handed to itself. And she's just waiting and waiting, and she says, it's all set, the only thing missing is my monster. That sucker's sure taking its time. And she says, suppose it suspects a trap. That's ridiculous. There's no reason why it should. When last it saw me, I was crippled and on the run. Unless it isn't merely smart, it's real smart. And then all of a sudden it crashes through the control room of the danger room. And she's like, I think I just got my answer. And so Kitty dives backwards, phasing through the face of the booth, and the demon charges after her, shattering the armored, supposedly unbreakable glass with terrifying ease, leaving shattered, savage computers short-circuiting in its wake. So they get to the floor of the danger room, and Kitty phases, and all these metal rods fly out and hurt this thing and just make it mad, essentially. And it starts to rip up the floor of the danger room, which sets the danger room off, and it's going crazy, and kind of explodes on it and everything. And so she runs out, because she starts to try to get out, because she's like, if I'm stuck in here with it, it's going to kill me too. I got to get out of here. So she's running, and she's tired, and she's exhausted, and she phases out of the danger room, and it follows her. And so she's heading down towards the hangar where the Blackbird is. And there's only one entrance into the hangar, and the walls surrounding it are so thick that she's like, nothing can penetrate these walls. So this is the only way it can come. So she gets to the hangar, gets in the Blackbird, and she's sitting there, and she's like, I can watch through the the cameras to see when it comes through the tunnel. And she's sitting in the pilot's chair, just watching, and she prays, Lord, help me remember this ignition sequence. And so after a little bit, she sees it coming on the camera, and she kind of starts to freak out, and she calms herself down. She's saying, stay calm, everything's going to be all right. And she's just trying to wait until it gets close enough. And finally it gets close enough, and she slams the last switch, and it says 2 engines rated at 20,000 kilograms of thrust flare to life at the touch of a button. They're at full emergency power, afterburners punching twin pillars of flame from the huge exhausts. From behind the Blackbird, it's like suddenly finding oneself transported to the gates of hell or plunged into the heart of a star. And so these massive engines are frying this thing, and they're causing like the whole place to just rumble, because it's just sitting there stationary, blowing flames essentially. And so it causes the whole foundation to kind of shake, and it kind of falls off of its landing gear and kind of wrecks a little bit. And so she gets out, and there's just, flame and fire and everything. And she's like, did I kill it? I had to. Nothing could have survived this Holocaust. Nothing. And then all of a sudden, this hand just reaches out for her, and it says she has time to scream. Then the X-Men return to the mansion. Storm and Colossus get Professor X out of the car. Colossus is like, there's no lights on. That could mean nothing. Kitty could have just gone to bed. It is late. We were held up. And Professor X is like, that could be so, but there is just an evil presence in the air, and it's inhibiting my telepathic abilities. Check inside. Aurora, stay here to protect the car. So Peter and Professor X go in, and Peter's like, that's really strange. It's significantly colder in here than it is outside. And Professor X says, I swear I've sensed this particular evil before, but for the life of me, I can't remember when. It's infuriating. And Peter's like, everything seems normal, Professor. And then he hears the TV. And he's like, someone must be in the living room. So he goes in there, and Kitty's yawning, and Colossus is like, Kitty! And she's like, oh, hi, Peter. And then she realizes, oh, Peter! And she runs and gives him this huge hug, and she's like, I'm so glad to see you. You won't believe what's happened. Then her mom and dad come around the corner and enter the room, and she's like, oh my gosh. She's so happy to see her family, because, her night started out missing her family, and it turns out that the X-Men went to go bring Kitty's family to her, because it was going to be her first Christmas away from the family. And so after Kitty and her mom and dad catch up a little bit, Professor X, thanks them for coming, and they thank Professor X for inviting them. They really miss their daughter and everything, and everything's just working out really well. And then Storm's like, so I went up to the attic, and she's like, yeah. She's like, what exactly happened, Kitty? And Kitty says, I was attacked by a big, ugly monster. She's like, you had to see it to believe it. We fought. I got lucky, and I won. But in the process, we kind of wrecked the danger room. And Storm says, wrecked the danger room? And Kitty says, and the Blackbird, and the hangar, and a lot of the house. And Storm says, oh my. And Kitty asks if Storm's angry, and she says, "I'm not quite sure, but from the sound of things, I'm fairly certain I should feel terribly proud of you." Then we see the remnants of the hangar. It had been the closest of close calls. She was too tired and too scared to phase when the demon reached for her. It could have killed her had it got its hands on her, but it was dying on its feet, its unearthly form crumbling into dust with every step. It tried. It made a supreme effort. It failed. Alone on Christmas Eve, Kitty Pryde underwent a rite of passage, a supreme test of her abilities, her intellect, her courage, herself. She passed. And their story is over. The story was just a very fun read for me. It's not very Christmassy, especially considering that the main character is Jewish and celebrates Hanukkah, but it's not very, doesn't have that holiday feel to it much. It's definitely a Christmas comic. Don't get me wrong. I believe 100% it should be on this list. But it is just a very fun comic. It's kind of like, instead of Ripley fighting a xenomorph, you've got Kitty Pryde fighting a Njari. And it's just cool. It's a pretty cool story about a very young Kitty Pryde in her first solo experience as an X-Man. And she faces stuff that she's never faced before, never even dreamed of facing before, and she comes out on top because the X-Men trained her and prepared her for it, and she's able to pull out that win and secure that victory. It's kind of a picture of what willpower and determination can get you, because she was determined to survive and determined to win and determined to beat this thing, and she did it. And so, regardless of what life throws your way, you can get through it. You can still make it to the other side of that attack or that experience, if you just put forth the will and the effort and the determination to move past this thing that's come against you. And it's just a cool story, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it too. So that's all I have about this Christmas comic. I don't have a Christmas moral for it. It's just one of those really good reads that's just enjoyable and a good time. But if something spoke to you about this comic, please let me know in the comments below. I love to see stuff like that. And I hope that you have a fantastic evening, and I hope that you will be back here tomorrow for day 18 of 25 Days of Christmas Comics. Thank you for watching. Good night.